Welcome back to American Warrior Radio, right here on the Talk to Me station, AM 1060 WMEL, and online worldwide, folks. We've got listeners from Korea to Afghanistan to Wyoming. That's 1060WMEL.com. Real quick, we mention this every single time at the opening of the program. Glenn, if somebody has a claims question or something that's bugging them they need help with, how can they get a hold of you?
Okay, email me at Glenn, Glenn, at avetproject, AVETPROJECT.org. That's Glenn at avetproject.org, and don't forget it's 2 N's.
We started this interview with John Murphy, who's an amazing man. He's got an incredible history during the last segment. Well, we're back with him, and thank you again for joining us in the studio and for hanging out for the second segment.
I've learned a lot just sitting here today. It's really been great, and I love that update from the Coast Guard because they're just a great part of our military community.
Yeah, they're kind of unspoken, unheard, but they're out there kicking it every single day, keeping our waterways. And they do so many other things. All the navigational aids, they are tasked with so much stuff. And there's only, what, Glenn, like 47, 50,000 of them total?
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty small force.
Of course, they work for Homeland Security,
Yep.
not the Department of Defense, but they are veterans.
Yes, and they do deploy. We've got former XO of this Coast Guard station, Port Canaveral, is over in Saudi Arabia. How you doing there, brother? I know you're listening. So they do. They deploy, and they do come under the DOD jurisdiction when they are in imminent danger areas or combat zones. But enough about them. Look, you looked at your clock, Judge, and I know you're maybe new to the radio here, but time flies, doesn't it? I mean, we kick it.
It moves fast, really fast.
Well, we left off with you telling us a little bit about your history, and tell us what happened. You got into college. Give us a little update.
I went to the University of Rhode Island, which was our home state throughout my dad's military career. And
otherwise known as Homo Record. That was his
Homo Record. And I majored in philosophy and took Army ROTC. And when it came time to graduate, I didn't know this, they offered me a commission in the Air Force because my dad was an active duty Air Force officer. I declined and chose to be commissioned in the Army, and I had received orders to go to the Infantry Officer Basic Course and Ranger School when I got accepted in law school, and they gave me a 3-year educational delay of my military commitment to go to law school on my dime. And that's what I did. So during law school, I quickly realized money is an issue, and I decided to join the Ohio National Guard. And up there, it's the 73rd Infantry Brigade, and I was a platoon leader, and I made sufficient money during my time in law school that when I graduated, I only had $10,000 in school debt.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
No kidding. No kidding.
The kids today, they're getting out of school with $150,000, $200,000 debts, and that's really tough to get going when you have that kind of debt. Anyway,
well, I just want to mention real quick, though, there are programs, both through the military and the VA has instituted some pretty slick programs, particularly on the healthcare side of the house. But if you're going through college, whether you're seeking some professional career such as an attorney, you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or a physician assistant, look hard for what the DOD and the VA offers, because there are ways to get them to absorb your debt so long as you're willing to make a commitment to serve this country.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you graduate law school. What happens next? You're in the Ohio National Guard.
I get out of the Ohio National Guard and move to Florida, and the Army said, you owe us your initial training. So here in Melbourne at that time, we had an MP company, so I chose to go to the MP Officer Basic Course, which was at Fort McClellan at the time. So I went up there, and that's a 6-month course, and I got back down here, and I reported in, and just so happened that day there were 8 lieutenants, and the captain, the company commander, said, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're over here, you other 4 over there, go find yourself a new home. He hadn't talked to any of us. So that was my door to go join Special Forces, which I had dreamed about since I was about 6 years old.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. Before we went on the air, you were sharing that story.
Well, we were living, Dad was at the Pentagon, and we were living in Alexandria, Virginia, and he brought me to Fort Belvoir to Armed Forces Day. And I remember two things that day. First, they had a Special Forces display, and they had this full-color book on what every person on the A team does. And Special Forces, the smallest unit, is an A team, 12 men. And the other thing I remember that day was the bread. The Army baker's bread was just phenomenal.
Oh, you could.
But from 6 years old, you know, that's the way it is. So at that point, I joined the Special Forces unit, which was over in Tampa. And I had to go to airborne school, so I went to airborne school, and then I launched to Fort Bragg to go to the Special Forces qualification course. And you start out at Camp McCall, the former home of the 11th Airborne Division, World War II fame. And out there, you go
Made
through.
a movie about it, I think. Yeah, there's some movies out there. Anyway.
So phase one is I was in the third class where the officers and the enlisted go through phase 1 and 3 together, because there was some gentleman's course kind of stigma. So they were changing that to get a more resilient officer in there that could better blend with his men and lead his men.
Kind of important, isn't it?
Rather
you're
than
the
be a
leader.
manager.
Right.
So anyway, and I made it through the course and graduated. And then I was assigned to a scuba team. And being a former competitive swimmer, it was a natural fit for me. And then I went to the Special Forces scuba course, and then I became the detachment commander for the scuba team.
And I just want to share with everybody, I'm looking over your military education. It takes up 2 pages, people. That you've done an awful lot in your military career. So the scuba team was a natural for you. Share with us that little story you had about the Olympic swimming pool.
Oh, you know, when I was in Japan, I was 7, 8, and 9 years old, and I was a competitive swimmer, and the team traveled around Japan competing in swimming events, and I got to swim in the Olympic pool in 1966 at a American-Japanese friendship meet. And I remember it because it was like, oh my gosh, this is so phenomenal. This is like world renowned.
Yeah.
And here I am, you know, within a year or two of the Olympics swimming in this pool. It's like, wow.
That's a cool story. So continuing through your military career, though, you went through the scuba course and you became a combat diver.
The best course that, and I tell all my young troops through my career, is the Jump Master course. That is where true leaders show their leadership, is in that Jump Master duty. And they wash out a lot of folks. It's only a 2-week course, but it is really intensive because safety is primary. So I always tell all my subordinate leaders, you need to go to the Jump Master course because your soldiers will show confidence in you if you can do that duty right. Because you're in the limelight, and
You got to lead by example, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
I mean, to be an effective leader, they have to know that you're there with them,
Absolutely.
willing to take the same risks that you're asking of them. And that only makes sense, right, Glenn?
That's right, and obviously you're excited about your career in the Army. And so you got any pointers or suggestions about young people out there today who want to get into the Army?
Well, not only just the Army, but all the services. It's a good place to start, was the old motto. You can learn some sort of trade, but more importantly, the military is about developing leadership. And leadership is incorporated, an organic part of every course. So where else can you get leadership training all the time? And you have plenty of people to model. And, you know, the basic concept of leadership is you've got to supervise about 6 folks. Even as a brigade commander, I supervised 4 battalion commanders, and then my primary staff officers, maybe about 7 folks, 8 folks. And if you can do a good job with those, and then they do the same, you know, at the end of my career, I had 800 soldiers spread across 5 states. So those leadership concepts, from the smallest, you know, A team to a brigade or division, the concepts are the same. get those people that are right there, let them know what you need done, and let them do it. Get out of the way and let them do it.
So that's a big change from what most civilians that I've run into think of. They never use the word leadership. They use the word management. Well, you don't manage people. You lead people.
That's a good point. So some young guy or gal that's interested in at least looking into the military, they're going to come away with some real skills. Aside from their MOS, that's their job specialty, or their AFSC, they're going to have this leadership instilled in everything that they do, every course that they go through. It's a preeminent feature of it. And I'm concerned about the generation that's coming in, because there's a lot of discouraging signs. The Army's being reduced by, over 100,000 troops. The Air Force taking a huge hit. All the military, the subs are leaving the Navy. I mean, all these different things. But you have to have a heart to serve. You have to love this country and actually want to do something to better yourself and support this country. Now, when you get out, though, there's opportunities. And Glenn and I, we've talked about this. By hiring vets, they're not just hiring a person that has one skill set. You're hiring somebody that's got a well-rounded sense of responsibility and those leadership skills you're talking about.
Yeah, they know how to show up to work on time.
Yeah, that's a big part of it right there.
In the right uniform.
At
At the right place.
Yes.
Which I used to drive home to my troops.
Hey, did you always, you mentioned from 6 years old, the Special Forces, and you're known as the Green Beret Judge, so you always wanted to be a special operator.
I did. I can't tell you how many books I read as a youth, and when I was given that opportunity, I just said, wow, I've really made it now, you know?
Living the dream.
Living the dream.
Cool.
Yes.
How many years did you serve in the military anyway?
I did just short of 30 years, a little bit over 29 years in the National Guard and the Reserves. And
Retired at what rank?
I retired as an 06 full colonel, and I just loved it. I was a commander 16 of my 29 years. So, and those other times I was a good follower, usually a operations officer or something like that. One of the highlights of my career was I got to be part of an exchange with the British SAS. So we went over to northern...
That's the equivalent of what in our military?
Sort of like, somewhere like Delta Force, Ranger.
Okay.
And we went over to northern England, and we got to do balloon jumps at Soldiers Field. So we got to do six to 10 jumps out of balloons.
Out of a balloon.
Out of a balloon, believe it or not, on a winch. They have a winch truck, and they send the balloon up to about 1,000 feet, and there's a basket you just step out of, which was really different than the jumps I had done before that. But what they were doing is they were bringing our troops through their counterterrorism training that they did before they rotated into Northern Ireland. This was somewhere around 1990. So anyway, and the culmination of the training was they brought us into this village that they had created, a whole village with people, role players, everything. And they just shellacked us because they knew their territory. There were little rat holes so they could run from apartment to apartment,
Simulated
house to house.
war games here.
And I mean, you learn a lot by going through those kind of things. And many of the techniques that they taught us, I brought back and put into my training for my soldiers.
Well, getting back to that balloon jump for a second, I mean, Halo is a high altitude, low opening. We're talking low altitude, low opening.
It absolutely is.
Jump out, pull the cord, huh?
Yeah. And I did get the opportunity to go to the Halo course. I'd been a skydiver, and that was a great course. Of course, the real deal is not the lower jumps, but when you're up breathing oxygen, because altitude will affect you if you don't have your own oxygen supply. And the culmination was a jump at 30,000 feet.
Wow. Stop it. This is where the airliners fly.
Yes, exactly.
And the reason for these halos would be so the enemy can't see us coming? I mean,
exactly.
They don't hear the jet, right?
Once you open the chute, there's a forward momentum to it. And you can calculate approximately where you're going to land so that you can jump out and you'll free fall a while, you'll open your chute, and then with the winds that have been calculated, you can actually calculate pretty closely to where you're going to land on the ground. Of course, throw the chutes into a hole, and then drive on with your mission.
Interesting. Now, I know we want to get to, sorry Glenn, I know we want to get to your civilian career and your pursuits now, but you had a question, Glenn?
Yeah, well, first of all, that's fantastic information. That's down and dirty there. You don't get that kind of information. You may see something simulated in a movie or something, but that's fantastic. And I was wondering, while we're on interesting tours that you had, give us a little information about the combat tour you had.
Well, I spent a year in Afghanistan, and I was assigned to the 3rd Special Forces Group, which is an active duty Special Forces group. And I had a number of positions during my year there, which was good because you do get kind of burnt out in your position. So I started out as the Chief of Staff of the Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force, and we had about 1,500 soldiers from 6-7 countries. So we had foreign special operations troops working with us. Then I moved on to be the Director of Plans. And then I was the liaison to our higher headquarters, which at that time was the 10th Mountain Division. George Rosenfield, 10th Mountain Division.
Cool.
And then my last 3 months, I was moved to Kabul because they had just created the 3-star headquarters there, and I was the Director of Information Operations.
Interesting. Hey, again, before we get into your civilian pursuits and what you've been doing for the veterans, you laid this card on us. I'm going to show it to the camera here. Tell us about this.
This is a death card. We created that, and that's when I was in the 11th Special Forces Group, which was a reserve group, which is no longer around. And because of the covert nature of many of the missions we did, people wouldn't even know we were there. So we would leave these cards.
Which is the way you guys like it, right? That's what you want.
But for exercises, they wouldn't even be able to verify whether we were there or not. So we would leave these to let them know that we had really blown up their facility or whatever our mission was, and we would leave those cards. The death card is something that was in the movie Apocalypse Now, if you remember.
Sure do.
The cavalry commander, what was that? Robert Duvall's going around, and he has a deck of cards and he's throwing them out. But on our card, we said destroyed or blown up or whatever.
Wounded,
we had little options there. He just threw the cards out. But it was an interesting little thing, and actually they became collector items.
Outstanding. And that one's mine now, right?
Oh, yeah.
You gave that to me. I'm not giving it back.
I'm not either.
But you understand that there's a prerequisite.
No, you got
I'm done.
I've been destroyed.
Yeah. Okay, so Judge, you're doing so much and have done so much for the veterans community. We got to touch on this. You are chiefly responsible for standing up the Brevard County Veterans Treatment Court. Tell us a little bit about that. I know it's still in operation now because you're no longer on the bench, but give us a little sense of how that came about and how it helps.
It came about, actually, Judge McKibben, as part of the Public Safety Coordination Council, was in a work group to try to reduce jail population. One of the ideas that came out of it was Veterans Court. And she asked me if I'd do it, and I said yes. And, well, I wasn't moving very fast, so she asked again 2 months later, and I said, uh-oh, I'd better get going now. So I put the word out, and the community support was fantastic. We had all sorts of community people that wanted to be involved, including a vet project. Mm-hmm. And because of that community support, I was able to draw a line in the sand well in advance of what anyone thought would happen.
That's a fact.
And we created our Veterans Treatment Court 3 months before the legislation even passed here in Florida. And we were the 3rd Veterans Court here in the state of Florida.
Again, didn't we? I mean, that's kind of the prevailing theme here. Leadership, people, taking the lead. John, you did, and I appreciate it. And you think of all the scores of people and their families and society as a whole that this program's helping.
Yes, and it's a great program, and I remember our first graduate because it's real easy, because his last name was First. You know what I mean? But I have had a number of those folks stop me out in the community to say, thank you so much for the chance that you gave me, and it helped turn me around. And that's what the Veterans Treatment Court is all about.
It's not really special consideration. I mean, it's just really...
Actually, it's a lot tougher because you can resolve a case by just paying a fine. In Veterans Court, we're going to do a mental health evaluation, a substance abuse evaluation. We're going to give you follow-on treatment if you need it. We do drug testing to keep the honest people honest, and then there's usually some sort of education involved. So it's a lot tougher program, but if you look at the short term versus the long term, the Veterans Treatment Court is usually the best choice for the veteran. But anyway,
and whatever charge they had can then just be, it disappears from the record, right? If
yes,
they successfully complete the program.
Absolutely. And we're hoping that we're going to be able to get DUI into Veterans Treatment Court.
It's a
here.
big thing, Judge.
It's huge. When I went out to visit Tulsa, which is a model court, half their cases were DUI cases. So it's really needed because many veterans, their drug of choice is alcohol. And we need to do something for them. And this is an opportunity for our state attorney, who is in concept considering this proposal, to give our veterans a chance. And our program is a lot tougher than the normal DUI sentence. So I am thinking that society will benefit. We will give something to our troops that have served our country, usually in combat, and it'll be a win-win for society, veterans, and the law enforcement community, because we'll identify people that need help and we'll get them to that help.
Yeah, well, thanks to you. Glenn, you had a question.
Yeah, switching gears a little bit now.